Hello, welcome to another EEVEE material study. In this one we are going to create a brushed metal. This has been requested by a subscriber after watching the Redmi K20 Pro material tutorial on my channel, and he requested the material of the Huawei P6. So I had to look that up, and the back of the Huawei P6, I don't know if this shows up in the video here, but it is a dark gray, almost black brushed metal. So that's what we're going to create today. I have this very simple setup here, just a plate with a bevel modifier on it, some lights all around, and that's it. And now we're going to create this brushed metal material. All right, first up, how do we get those brush strokes going horizontally, from left to right? Well, very easy. We take a texture, noise texture, and then hit Ctrl T with the Node Wrangler add-on enabled, which comes with Blender. This is, by the way, Blender 2.81 that I'm working in. Okay, now let's look at this noise texture. It looks like this. If we look at the factor, we get a black and white representation of this noise, and it looks like that. And in order to make streaks or brush strokes or scratches basically out of this, all we really need to do is crank up this Y value here to something really high, like 100. Okay, so it looks like this. And then we still get this weird pattern going on here. So we take down the scale here and stretch it out even further to something like 0.3. Okay, so now we have those scratches horizontally. That's really all we need for the brushed metal look. Okay, now to get some more detail, we can go in here and turn up the detail a little, and maybe even turn up the distortion to make it look more random, so we don't have any pattern visible. Just play with these values here to get something nice looking. Now if we look at our principled BSDF, we get this if we use it as the base color, and I'm going to pipe this through a color ramp, turn up the metallic and bring up the blacks, and take this flag here and make it very dark gray. So we get something like this. So we have a dark gray brushed metal kind of texture. Now I'm just affecting the color for now. Okay, so I want to get another level of variation or randomness onto this surface, and I'm going to do that with the roughness. So you know what, I'm just gonna copy all of this, plug in the generated again, set the scale here to 1. So what do we have here? This kind of noise texture. Maybe turn down the scale a little and remove the distortion, so we have this, and pipe that through this color ramp. For the roughness, I want something around, I don't know, around 0.5. So going between maybe 0.4 and 0.6 or 0.3 and 0.5. So I can use a color ramp to do that. I just take everything that is 0 and go to the RGB 0.3, and then take this flag and make it 0.5. So I get this gradient here and plug that into the roughness. What do we look like now? So this is what it looks like without this extra detail, and this is what it looks like with that roughness added. You can see we get those like spots. It looks more random. We can play with the scale for this roughness effect. And this is really going to start showing up as soon as we do something with the normals, because I want to plug in this noise texture, this guy here, that I'm using for the color for my principled node. I want to also use it for my normal map to actually change the normal, or to actually give it some bump mapping. Now, there is an issue with the bump map though. So I can take a vector bump map. I just take the factor that I have here, plug it into the height, plug the normal in here, and then turn down the strength. Well, first of all, let's look at the principled BSDF. What does it look like? It looks like this now. And you can see the bump here is quite strong, so maybe turn that down and turn that down. And you can see this doesn't look good. The bump maps in EEVEE, they don't look very nice. And in fact, this is a known thing, a known issue. If you absolutely have to use a bump map, because maybe you have a bump map texture or something, then the recommended way to use it is to render at twice the resolution and then scale down the final render to half the size, because the bump maps are only calculated at half of the resolution or something like that. That's what I read. So instead of using bump maps, it is better to use a normal map. Now, if you're using texture maps or images for this, you might not have a normal map, but in our case right here, instead of the bump map using the black and white or the grayscale coming out of the factor here, we can use a normal map and use the color information, so this noise texture. Now think of the normal map, you plug in colors. And the colors represent the X, Y, and Z change of the normal. So to drive a normal map, you need RGB values, and R is going to be X, G is going to be Y, and so on. So RGB, we have a noise texture here that gives us color information, this thing. We just plug that into the normal map. Then turn down the strength to 0.1 and use that instead of this bump map node. So something like this. Let's look at that, principled. And once it's done baking this texture for EEVEE, this is what we get, and this is still way too strong, so let's turn that down. And look at this, looks much nicer than with the bump map. Okay, so we have brushed metal. We can turn this up to get finer finer scratches. Like, I don't know, 100 and something. Stretch it out further or less with these scale values here. And then of course we have that extra texture on here, which comes from this noise here, which we can also adjust with that. Looks very nice, I think. And we have our normal map on top of it. Also, I turned up the metallic here, as you saw before, which is also quite important because this sort of looks flat, doesn't look right. If you want brushed metal, you need at least a little bit of, or maybe 100% of metallic. Maybe that looks cool too. I think I'm gonna turn it down a little to something like this. Now we have this dark gray brushed metal finish. Okay. Of course, you have to, put in a camera hole and put on the Huawei logo if you want this to be a Huawei P6. But at the end of the day, this is a brushed metal and you can use it for anything in EEVEE, real time, super fast, super nice looking. This is the node setup, very easy to do. And then we can render out this sort of animation with it. All right, that's it for this one. I have more EEVEE material study videos in the pipeline. And if you're interested in that, please don't forget to subscribe. Tap the notification bell so you can be the first to see the new videos coming out. Also, don't forget you can download this file from my Patreon page. Thanks for watching. Chris P. out.